too.
Okay, awesome.
A few slides.
That's great. Hey, good morning, folks. Welcome for those of you who are just joining us to our Giving Tuesday event for the Rough Grouse Society and American Woodcock Society. If you were with us for the previous hour, you had the privilege to hear from Zach Evans, our Forest Conservation Director for the Eastern Great Lakes. I'm very pleased to now be joined by Sara Cerv. Sara serves as our Forest Conservation Director for the Coastal Plain and Piedmont region. And for those of you who didn't major in geography, don't worry. We're going to talk about where is the Coastal Plain and Piedmont? Because I imagine we got a bunch of it's a geography that may not be familiar to our core community, but it's a place where we're doing some exciting things, and Sara's going to speak to all of that. Folks, my name is Carl Malcolm. I serve as Vice President of Conservation for RGS and AWS, and I am honored to be here with you all today. I appreciate folks taking time from your busy lives to join us and get a finger on the pulse of what's going on in our organization. I do want to start off just by saying a huge thank you to everybody who's part of our community, our members, our volunteers, our donors. The things that we're going to be celebrating today would not be possible without you being part of our mission delivery. And it is very important work, and we are deeply grateful to all of you for being a part of it. We're experimenting a little bit today, right? We're trying to open up a line of communication, put ourselves out there, have a chance to highlight and celebrate the quality of people, the quality of professionals that we have helping deliver our forest conservation mission in RGS and AWS. And so over the course of today's Giving Tuesday events, I've got the honor of hosting 6 of these region-specific update sessions with our forest conservation directors. So, Sara, for starters, let's just, at a very rudimentary level, just tell us a little bit about the Coastal Plain and Piedmont region.
Right. So the Coastal Plain and Piedmont region ranges, the region that I'm overseeing ranges from Richmond, Virginia, down to Atlanta, Georgia. And it's primarily, the primary ecosystem is flat pine savannas. And we also have bottomland hardwoods as well.
So it doesn't sound like very good rough grouse hunting. What's going on? Why are we down there? What's got our
No,
attention focused on that
so
geography?
right, it's the only conservation region that's focused on the American woodcock. And so in many parts of the United States, both rough grouse and American woodcock live side by side, but there are parts where they don't live side by side, and the Coastal Plain and Piedmont region is one of those. Also, a fun fact that we will dive into a little bit later in the conversation is that in the Eastern Atlantic Flyaway, so that's Maine to Florida, 1/3 of the overall American woodcock population overwinters in the Carolinas. So it's an important place for the bird as a whole.
Yes. So it's fun. It's just fun to think about, these birds. And I mentioned on the previous conversation, most of my upland bird hunting has been in the upper Great Lakes. So like the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, for example, when you get into those amazing flights where you have the days where it's just like you can't take 5 steps in the woods without bumping into a woodcock, and then the next day they vanish, right? Like there are these old wives' tales about like woodcock migrating to the moon, like they just disappear when the cold weather comes. But it's fun to think about all the interesting places in the South where these birds that we're hunting in October spend a good chunk of their lives. It's like we kind of forget about them, but they're down in places like the Coastal Plain and Piedmont, prepping to make that next generation of birds and living out their existence in some habitats that would look a little unfamiliar. So on that note, and I'm thinking about all the meetings that you and I are on where you've got this background of woodcock habitat from your neck of the woods. So talk a little bit about what someone might expect to see in terms of woodcock habitat at the more southern extent of their range.
Right. So regenerating clear cuts or harvests of loblolly pine and mixed hardwood stands. So a really great woodcock stand is really something that you do not want to walk in. It's a dense pine and hardwood, about 10 years in age at your eye.
Mm-hmm. So that part about like walking through it, maybe poking out your eyeballs, that sounds very familiar.
Right.
But the species composition might be a little different. Um, we've got some ground to cover professionally, right? Like the work that's happening. I know you've got a little presentation that you're going to give, which I'm looking forward to. But before we jump into that, just so folks have a sense of the kinds of people we have in our organization. Sarah, could you talk a little bit about like when you saw a job advertisement for a position with RGS and AWS, what was it about this organization that made you think, you know what, I'm throwing my hat in the ring for that gig?
Right. So great question, Carl. And I guess I would preface in saying that I have not upland bird hunted before. So joining this organization really came down to my personal values and my professional background, specifically in sustainable forest management and wildlife conservation. And so the opportunity to contribute to an impactful, hands-on forest management focused organization and also collaborate with like-minded individuals was really the reason why I joined this organization. I want to make an impact in preserving the land and enhancing forest ecosystems that have really substantially impacted my life.
Hmm.
Yeah, I grew up in Christiansburg, Virginia, which is a small town outside of Virginia Tech, and my hobby was horseback riding. So that's what I did throughout the George Washington and Jefferson National Forest. And that really created a passion for forestry and the natural resources that I'm very grateful to be able to continue into a professional career.
Hmm. I think one of the things a lot of folks in the upland bird hunting community, like a thread of common ground when you talk about growing up around horses, that relationship between like a working animal and the bond, uh,
Right.
whether it's working with horses, working with bird dogs, just being able to tap into the physical talents and aptitudes of these other species that we don't possess, I think is a really cool aspect of being a human,
Mm-hmm.
whatever your working animal might be. Um, and I wouldn't throw this out there if you hadn't already given me like a little bit of a
Right.
preview on your philosophy around hunting, because if you were to tell me I'm passionate about forests, I'm passionate about forest health, I want to help leave these landscapes in a better place, whether you told me you ever wanted to be a hunter or not, I would be like, we've got a spot for you in this organization. So I don't want people to misread the question, but you have hinted
Mm-hmm.
at some curiosity around upland bird hunting. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So I have a few hunts scheduled for January with a few stakeholders that I've met in the region. And so I am excited to get out and really explore that area within this organization. I think it would definitely connect a lot of the forest management technical expertise that I have with a lot of the passion and the hobbies that our members have within the organization.
Mm-hmm. Have you been starting to try to bust any clay pigeons at all yet?
I have busted clay pigeons, and I'd have to
Okay.
say that well, I was pretty good at 3 times that I did it. So recently,
I'm not
yeah.
surprised. I'm not surprised to hear that. I've certainly seen some new hunters come online and demonstrate some good shotgun skills. Zach, you'll appreciate this. In the session the previous hour was talking about. I thought this was very funny. He's a very accomplished outdoorsman for everybody's benefit. He was talking about wanting so badly to be a consumptive user, but not always shooting well enough for that to be
Mm.
the the outcome, which I thought was a fun line of thought. But we're all going to be very excited to hear the reports, and maybe with our like social media channels, we can give some updates on Sarah Cerv's first woodcock hunts
Right.
come winter time. Um, I also like I want to sort of toot your horn a little bit here on the professional front a little further, because in addition to the background that you have, like educationally in sustainable forestry, you also play a leadership role within the Society of American Foresters. So could you talk a little bit about your involvement with SAF, Society of American Foresters?
Right. So I previously I worked for a forestry consultant based out of Raleigh, and that organization, as well as our organization, is very intent on developing professional skills within the employees. And so the forestry consultant encouraged me to attend a leadership development course. And that leadership development course was put on by the Society of American Foresters. So that was my first introduction, and it's a professional organization focused on the forestry profession. So you have a lot of different stakeholders, from private consultants to the U.S. Forest Service, to nonprofits as well. And so I serve on the board for the Appalachian Society, which is Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. And I serve as the membership chair. So I'm focused on creating membership value. And
Mhm.
I've been in this position for 2 years now. And I really enjoy it. And I also think it gives me a lot of valuable insights into my role into this organization as well.
Totally. And I love the idea of having members of our team as leaders in the space
Mm-hmm.
outside of our organization too. So Sarah's one of those folks, had a chance just a month or so ago to attend the national convention along with a couple of other team members. So we're out there as an organization in the shared forestry space, as a known entity and as a voice for taking good care of these ecosystems. And obviously Sarah is a key part of that. You mentioned that you had a presentation, and I
Mm-hmm.
will let everybody know, like, we're learning crowdcast here. None of us are super dialed in on the technology, but Sarah, do you want to take a stab at trying to share your presentation? I can just turn the floor over to you, or how do you
Right.
want to handle that?
Yes. Let me figure
Oh
out how to
man.
show this.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. So earlier, when I said that there would be more information about the Eastern Woodcock Migration Research Collaborative, this is my slide devoted to that. And so back to our previous conversation as to why this region was founded. The American Woodcock Society was founded in 2014. And the real first initiative through the American Woodcock Society was supporting research occurring within the Eastern Woodcock Migration Research Cooperative. And so they're based out of the University of Maine. And at first, what they did was put GPS transmitters on woodcock to be able to track their movement. And that way we can gain valuable insights into their migration and also habitat selection. So that way we can, as forestry or natural resource practitioners, make more informed management decisions. And so the American Woodcock Society supported this effort through purchasing transmitters. And since that started in 2017, we've tagged almost 800 woodcock. And through the data gathered through those transmitters, a third of the woodcock population on the Eastern Atlantic fly away, overwinters, or stops in the Carolinas. And so that's why the coastal plain and Piedmont region was created 10 years after the establishment of the American Woodcock Society. So that was my first slide.
Love it.
And then I just wanted to give a map showcasing my region. You can say the coastal plain in Piedmont, but honestly, that region occurs from Delaware to Texas. And so I wanted to include a visual of where specifically I'm managing. And the easiest way to communicate that is from Richmond, Virginia to Atlanta, Georgia. One thing that I also think is pretty interesting within this region and also the Southern Alps region and the Mid-Atlantic region is that we overlap in 3 to 4 states. Virginia, 3 regions overlap, and North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia, 2 regions overlap. And so that's been very beneficial specifically for me for generating relationships, because a lot of the stakeholders within that state already knew of the Ruffed Grouse Society and the American Woodcock Society through those other regions already being there. Yeah, so I'm excited. It's been great working with Sean Berry and Ben Larson, who would join this region. And so the next section is showcasing the current projects of my region. And so before we get into the technical advancements with the GPS transmitters and the Eastern Woodcock Migration Research Collaborative, I wanted to highlight some information that was gained about 25 years ago in the 1950s. And that's really when the first bird banding efforts began, around that time. And this map is just showcasing where the birds were banned and the banned/found and the migratory pattern of those banned birds. And so today we are using not the same technology, but the same method of tagging a bird, saving its GPS location, so that way we can gather information to make more informed decisions. And with the Eastern Woodcock Migration Research Collaborative, we are starting a part 2 of the research study that started in 2017. And the part 2 is really diving into the overwintering area, primarily in North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia as well. And so to do that, we wanted to look at the information that we already have from the first effort. And so the map on the left is showcasing the data that has been collected so far. And what it is showcasing is migration, density in particular to the county. And what I thought was interesting in finding this 1953 map that I actually found yesterday, comparing it with the map that we've generated for this wintering ground study, they're pretty similar in the migration pattern. I think it's pretty interesting to note that it's dense in Southern Virginia, and then the density is kind of average out across the state counties, which if you compare it with the 1953 migration, it's where the two lines start. And so the first step with the Eastern Woodcock Migration Research Collaborative is to analyze the data, so that way we can determine what needs to be included in the wintering ground research. And so that study will start in 2026 and occur for 3 to 5 years after that. And the 3 objectives with that study is to determine woodcock distribution in the wintering grounds, including management, prioritization, and the significance in nesting and brood rearing activities. So that's one. We have a lot of GPS data already, so that information will help us determine that objective pretty quickly. And then our second objective is woodcock wintering habitat relationships and best management practices. So we want to use that GPS information, or obtain more GPS information about site selection of woodcock in the wintering grounds. So that way we can create best management practices to guide our forest management activities within the southern states. And then the last objective, the third one, is to look at woodcock migration to help inform woodcock monitoring and harvest management. So this is one project that I've been working on throughout this year. And this month, we're wrapping up our study methodology, and we will start implementing in 2026 for the next 3 to 5 years. And the slide was showcasing how the GPS locations can help inform site selection and habitat management. And this was an area in North Carolina. And you can see they like the bottom hardwoods. And I'm not exactly sure the age of the trees on this stand. And so the other project that I'm currently working on is a stewardship agreement with the U.S. Forest Service Francis Marion. And what this project will do is help execute the Cainhoy Forest Health Project, which is in total about a 3,000 acres of pine dominated stands that we will help improve. And to accomplish this project, we will be hiring a forest wildlife specialist in this area. And so the project will occur on the Francis Marion. And that Google point there is actually the Forest Service office, and it's about 30 minutes south of that point. So it's about an hour, if not closer to 30 minutes outside of Charleston. And the two objectives of that project is to, number one, help with creating more longleaf ecosystem. And this forest is pretty interesting in that Hurricane Hugo came through in 1989 and pretty much demolished that forest. And so what regenerated organically and also what was planted was loblolly pine trees, where historically this forest was predominantly longleaf. And so as a management recommendation going forward, conversion or restoration from loblolly to longleaf is important. So through this timber sale, through timber sales within these 3,000 acres, a majority of that will be focused on harvesting loblolly pine and establishing longleaf. And then additionally, outside, well, there are areas within that forest that aren't really susceptible to fire, just from the wet natured soils and wet natured soils and other conditions. And so in those areas, thinning and also creating wildlife habitat openings will be of an importance. And so this project will, again, majoritively focused on timber sales, commercial thinnings, final harvest, seed tree harvest. But additionally, it's adjoining a highly biodiverse region called the Cainhoy Ridge, which is a forested wetland characterized by mixed pine hardwood stands and bottomland hardwood forests. And the stands themselves have not really been managed actively. Historically, they would have fire sometime once the wetland would dry out, fire would come across and help kill hardwood encroachment and allow for grasses to come back. And so you can see the two images on the picture. The one in the upper right is a wetland ecosystem that has been burned that looks as it historically, traditionally would look. And so the picture on the bottom right showcases the same habitat where fire or natural disturbance has not been introduced. And you can see how the ecosystem is very different. And so three species that inhibit this ecosystem is the frosted flatwood salamander, which is only found on the Francis Marion forest. And then also the Carolina gopher frog. So in terms of conservation, those two species definitely take a majority of the conversation. But what's beautiful is the habitat that they live in is the same habitat that the American woodcock also lives in. So helping maintain, apply fire or mechanical disturbance within these wetland ecosystems not only helps these two endangered prioritized species within South Carolina, but also helps the American woodcock. And so this is a very fantastic project to be working on within the region, and I'm excited for this to begin in 2026. And then we can go into future projects. So, a little history about North Carolina. And the Endangered Species Act, I'll have to take it back to the 1970s. The Endangered Species Act was passed in 1973 in Oregon through the spotted owl. And at that time, really, natural resource management for forestry was more so with timber extraction, resource extraction, and with in Oregon, in that specific space, the spotted owl took the hearts of many people who live there. And so it started a conversation as to other ecological benefits that forest ecosystems provide. And through that conversation was wildlife. And through that overall time period, the Endangered Species Act was created in the 70s. The next most important, the next animal that really took society's heart was the red-cod-cated woodpecker in North Carolina. And so they are a species that like long leaf pine savannas with really old, large, older trees. That's where they build their cavities. And so conservation efforts in North Carolina really began in the 1970s. And so, our organization plugging into this region, it's not so much as to creating a new methodology or a new conservation practice. It's really plugging in with the people who've been practicing in the state for the past 50 years. And one incentive to support and conserve the longleaf ecosystem is through federal grants, through NIFWIF, and they're applied into these local implementation teams. And what is also pretty interesting about our organization is that as a director, and also just the region in general, we operate in multiple states, whereas a lot of state agencies operate only in that state. Or even if it's a multi-state agency, they have representatives that work in only one state. And so with the history of conservation in this state and the local implementation teams, and with myself working across multiple states, it provides a great foundation to acquire NIFWIF funding. And so one area of focus is connecting these two partnerships that border North Carolina and South Carolina. It's called the North Carolina Sandhills Conservation Partnership and the Sandhills Longleaf Pine Conservation Partnership. And those two areas, those two geographies are connected through a river called the Petey River. And so what my goal is to apply for NIFWIF funding to connect these two conservation initiatives along the Petey River. And that is primarily done through private landowner support. I think one component that also makes my region a little different from others is that it is focused only on the American woodcock. And the American woodcock are known to inhibit much smaller stands, smaller forest ecosystems than the grouse. And they can be in a stand buffer that's 50 to 100 feet in width and less than an acre in size. And so that size really lends to the private landowner management. So with federal funding, with these two implementation teams connected by a river, how to connect the public land in those two geographies are through the private landowner. So that is a current grant proposal that I am orchestrating across multiple stakeholders, and I'm hoping to apply this cycle and have funds next year for implementation. And that's it for my slides. It was this, yeah. So thank
Awesome.
you. Yeah.
Thank you for the overview. Those were some great visuals and great explanation. I loved seeing in the chat specifically we have Steve Smith, who is very excited about seeing the coastal plain and Piedmont region specifically highlighted. So, Steve, we're really glad that you're here with us. And want to encourage folks to ask questions. We've got the ability to hit the Q&A button there on the right side of your screen. And we're also, of course, tracking the chat. If people want to share any notes about your woodcock hunting season, whether it was in the north or the south, let us know observations from the field. And Sarah, there is a question here from Mark I'll throw out there. And I'm thinking specifically about your partnership, the budding relationship with the Francis Marion National Forest as I read you this. But we can tag team it if you want, but you kick it off. So Mark asks, I read the federal government is trying to get more logging in national forests for fire prevention, mostly it seems, but also for wildlife. Any comment on this? Is RGS AWS pushing for wildlife cuts too?
Right. So Francis Marion is a pretty interesting forest, and that, like I said, they are really loblolly pine dominated due to Hurricane Hugo that came through in the 1980s. So timber sales or logging is really a method being used to restore the historic ecosystem in that forest. So yes, timber production is going to increase across our national forests, but I think the question to that is where. And as long as it's not a biologically rich environment, or if you're changing the cover type from something that historically existed there to something that does not, I think it's perfectly okay to do timber sales. And also the wildlife cuts portion of that question. Yes, in the bottomland hardwoods, having small openings of a half an acre or less or larger is beneficial to have a diverse forest structure. And so that's also the benefit of doing timber sales too, because what we reference in the Southeast a lot, North Carolina, South Carolina, is the wall of wood. It's the wall of loblolly pine trees that were planted in the 80s and the 70s. And what that creates is just a homogeneous forest cover, which doesn't support a lot of wildlife. So having timber production sustainably to where you can have these smaller cuts that provide that age of forest across the land cover is really the best practice conservationally. Mm-hmm. And Carl, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, I just add a little bit on the national level. I think that we're really excited about the budding relationship and opportunity there on the Francis Marion. It fits really nicely in with the vision for the coastal plain and Piedmont region, and also, as Sarah indicated, a lot of benefits to Forest Service mission delivery and the health of those systems. And in the national picture, Mark's absolutely right. There continues to be a lot of focus on trying to get more fuel reduction and wildfire risk reduction work in fire-prone ecosystems. And there is a push currently, and there has been for a number of years, to try to invest more resources in getting vegetation management work delivered. And I'm using the language like with a lot of intent here, because that includes logging, that includes like commercial timber harvest. There's also a lot of vegetation management work where the wood cannot pay its way out of the forest, right? We're talking about like non-commercial, low value material, but there's a habitat need. And so one of the main points I want to try to drive home here is that not all veg management is the same, right? There's a lot of different diversity in terms of the types of activities. But at the federal level right now in the Forest Service, I would say that the two big trends are, number one, a big emphasis on more active management on national forests for a variety of reasons. And number two, a greater need and opportunity for collaboration in delivering that mission with partners. So for anybody who had a chance to hear the previous session with Zach Evans from our Eastern Great Lakes region, we talked a little bit about stewardship contracting. That's the same kind of model that we're talking about for the Francis Marion partnership. But this idea of having a partner organization like RGS and AWS, and Sarah's been spending a considerable amount of time working with the forest to try to set the stage for this partnership, where then they are able to rely on our organization to help with the execution of the sale and contracting out the follow-up service work. So there's a lot of administration. There's a lot of people power that it takes to do all of that work. And the Forest Service, which is staffed with a bunch of tremendous people, there is more work than people. So for them to be able to achieve at a high level, they need help from partners. And so we're trying to find ways to step in along with others in the conservation space. But that's part of the niche that we can fill really well, because we've got people like Sara who have that expertise in the forestry space. You're going to have a chance for folks who attend some of our later sessions to hear elsewhere in the country where we have people like, I'm thinking, Sara, about Melly Napper, who is basically, she's on the Green Mountain National Forest, almost functioning. She reports to the Forest Service office. She's helping mark timber sales, administer a timber sale there on the Green Mountain. So we're trying to find ways to help plug some of those holes for partner agencies like the Forest Service. So anything you'd want to add further on that, Sara?
Right. I was just thinking about the Cane Hoy Forest Health Project, and specifically in that region, there is quite a bit of timber sales that would be done within that project, but there is also a lot of wetland restoration work that will occur as well. And so, from the Forest Service standpoint and their limited capacity through limited personnel, this project, the wetland restoration, is really not something that would be a high priority. So partnering with different stakeholders allows not only for the Forest Service to accomplish more work on their forests, but also work into these ecosystems and improve these ecosystems that would historically not be a priority for them, and most likely would not get done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Thanks for that. Thanks for the question, Mark. The chat is active, which is awesome. We've got a question about the recording of these sessions. We are recording the sessions, and I know we're going to be sharing out at least like snippets and pieces. The full recording piece we'll get back. I'm chatting on the side with our tech support, Kevin, here. He rolled it into Q&A and answered it. So Kevin, if you want to give me a clear answer to that, I can throw it into the commentary here as well. Jeremy Parnell, Sara is great. Glad to see her representing the area where I grew up. He talks about woodcock hunting in West Virginia being fabulous this year. Interestingly, some of the best spots to find them are on reclaimed mine sites. Has RGS and AWS considered putting in habitat work on these landscapes? Anything to offer on that one, Sara?
Yes, that is currently a topic of discussion with specific stakeholders. And yes, it offers a great way to restore land and provide habitat for not only woodcock, but other early successional forest species. And so that is something that I would love to incorporate in the region. There is a mine reclamation site that is not far from one of the landscape implementation teams that we were discussing about further. So yes, one of my goals is to incorporate that. The question is how, with the stakeholders that we have at the table. But great question, Jeremy.
Yes, indeed. And as my crowdcast skills improve, folks, I'm realizing in the Q&A box, I can see where Kevin has indicated, definitely, we will post these on the regional page momentarily. So if folks want to revisit content or share out further, by all means, that will be available to you. Just scanning here. Let's see. Another question from Tom Pratley. Do you expect to get enough money from the sales to suppress the loblolly in favor of longleaf? When you say wall of wood, that sounds like a big job.
Right. Thank you, Tom. And so I think it is important to clarify that with stewardship agreements, the timber sale revenue goes right back into the forest, into managing that forest appropriately. So, yes, I think that the value from the timber sales will be enough to suppress loblolly regeneration. Also, within that area of South Carolina, and also the coastal plain in Piedmont, fire is a huge component of forest management. And the Forest Service, especially in South Carolina and North Carolina, has a pretty great team of wildland. Well, they're not firefighters, but implementing fire on the ground. And so that would be an aspect in this implementation of this project. So yes, I think the revenue would be enough to suppress the loblolly. It just depends on how you're applying those resources and how you are applying the management activities.
Mm-hmm.
And the wall of wood question, that is a big job, and it's it's a problem through our historical choices. When we harvested a lot of the timber and then we planted it back, in loblolly because it was the most fastest growing and also physically structured pine tree. And so anyways, there is a wall. There is a great quantity of loblolly at the same age, and that really has factored into some of these different markets decreasing in value and mills shutting down in the region. So yeah, we as a conservation natural resource professional forester, there are a lot of different problems that currently need to be solved. But I think also that's where I'm passionate about. I think that we can find an innovative solution to address these problems. It's just getting all of the stakeholders together to talk about the issues. And within the North Carolina and South Carolina, really management for wildlife has become the topic because traditional forestry consultants focused on timber production, that revenue, that profit isn't as much there because of our previous management decisions. So yes, there is a large amount of loblolly pine, but I think that lends beautifully to conservation and wildlife focused forest management.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. And really digging and appreciating the engagement here. We've got a little follow-up commentary from Mark. He says, in one job, I visited many national forests on the East Coast, Southeast, West, and to a man and woman, they all complained about lack of management, too much climax forest, mostly due to misguided lawsuits to stop logging. So one thing I just wanted to throw into the mix here that I think, Sarah, maybe you can speak to a little bit is on the messaging front, right? Like when it comes to public perceptions, and I'm just thinking back to like when I was in elementary school, and the only time I heard anybody talk about logging, it was like the Amazon rainforest is getting cut down. We're losing X amount of rainforest per day, right? And I was a kid who cared about nature. I'm like, man, that sounds terrible. And I think like that level of awareness around silviculture, around forestry, around caring for forests in an active fashion, like that level is where a lot of people stay, right? Like the Amazon rainforest is getting cut down. So if I see a log truck rolling down the highway, that's inherently a bad thing. So can you, like, I'm thinking about your role with SAF. You're very thoughtful when it comes to how we talk and message about the work. What would you like? What are some of your observations or like advice around how we broach the topic of forest management in a way that might resonate with more people effectively?
Right. I just want to say that first, this is a great question. And it's something that personally I see as well through my family and through just other people that I've met professionally. That's always the question. Like, why are you cutting trees down? How is that actually beneficial? And I think it's just as it's distilling the language down into a way that someone with average knowledge could understand, and then also including the benefits of what active forest management helps to create, which is a diverse forest with different habitat to support different wildlife. And so if we do nothing, that is a forest management option. But it would continue to be the problems that we see today. So yeah, that is a question that is asked of a lot of every really natural resource practitioner, forestry practitioner. And I also think that's the beauty of our organization, because we have different organizations like the Forest Service or your North Carolina Forest Service or your South Carolina Forestry Commission, where their main focus is implementing forest management activities on the ground. And they may not have the capacity or the time to educate and outreach and to educate the public on the benefits associated with the work that they're doing. And so that's a huge component within this region, and also our organization is really showcasing to the general public why the work we're doing is beneficial, not only for wildlife, but for the environment too.
I love that. And one of the things that comes to mind, if somebody's asking questions like that, there's a glimmer of hope there, because what that indicates is like that person cares enough about forests to have an opinion. Maybe it's not
Right.
super well informed. And by the way, I'm also not suggesting that every single logging project or every single timber harvest that's being implemented in the United States or the Amazon or wherever is a great conservation success, right? As you indicated, like with the loblolly example, and we've got plenty of places where there's been a tremendous amount of high grading of forests where we've made, in hindsight, it's like, what were we, what were they thinking, right? But this idea of ecologically and conservation oriented silviculture, like the art of caring for a forest and trying to set the stage for future health and resilience. I always say, like, that should be a white hat thing. People should be thanking, the folks who are trying to implement. And that's not the world that we're living in yet. So the stories that we tell, the messages that we tell, really matter. And as we get here towards the top of the hour, this has been an awesome session, Sarah. I want to mention to folks, so today's Giving Tuesday. For those of you not familiar with Giving Tuesday, the idea of today is following up on these days of lots of consumption, right? Like Black Friday, get the smoking deals, go camp out outside of Best Buy and fight with a bunch of people for a flat screen TV. And then you've got Cyber Monday, right? Like get on Amazon and make sure you get the smoking deals on Amazon. Today is like the day where nonprofits are in the spotlight, talking about the work that we do, trying to celebrate the successes of the year in the hindsight, celebrate what's on the horizon. Most importantly, say huge thank yous to our community. And for us, that's our team within the organization, but that's really our volunteers, our members, and our donors. So we want to say a huge thank you to all of you who make this work possible. And, just going back to this idea of the people who care about forests, maybe not all of them are upland bird hunters. We know not all of them are upland bird hunters. As you're thinking about people in your life who care about forest health, who care about wildlife, whether they're a bird hunter, a dog owner, or not, and especially if they're a bird hunter and a dog owner, think about giving folks a membership to RGS and AWS. Part of our goal for today, I'll give you a few goals. One, we really want to put ourselves out there. We're trying to open up lines of communication. And I love the questions and the engagement. It's awesome. Thank you for putting questions in and comments in. So we're trying to put ourselves out there and celebrate the things that we're doing. We're trying to highlight people like Sara, who constitute our team. And you're not going to find a more consummate, talented professional in the forestry space than Sara Cerv, leading our coastal plain and Piedmont region. And you're going to get that same kind of a dynamic from every one of our FCDs today. And when I say FCDs, those are the Forest Conservation Directors, Sara and her peers. So we're trying to put ourselves out there. And we are trying to encourage our community to stay involved and to increase your involvement. So if you've got somebody in your life who's like, man, I'd love to have a conversation about active management and forest stewardship with my mom or my aunt, sign them up. Let's get them an RGS and AWS membership. Just head on over to roughgrousesociety.org. And there's a lot of ways to support the organization, and we appreciate all of them tremendously. Sara, as we get towards the top of the hour, any other successes you want to highlight? Anything on the horizon that you're excited about? Anything you want to add to our call to action for Giving Tuesday as we close in on the top of the hour?
Right. I think within the work that I have lined up, the most exciting project for myself, and I think others to understand the bird, the American woodcock bird, is the Eastern Woodcock Research Migration Collaborative. And we will be reaching out to members for a broad array of needs, helping to fund the purchasing of GPS transmitters being one, helping to inform the study. I believe that we will be having a call in January of 2026 to review the study outline, to hopefully have some membership engagement around the research questions that are being asked. And then also when it comes time to banding birds in the region, that will also be an opportunity. So I say from a project that will really engage the members and further our scientific knowledge of the bird, the Eastern Woodcock Migration Research Collaborative Wintering Ground Study is it's a mouthful, is the project I'm most looking forward to. And to round it out, I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined this call. We all have a lot of competing responsibilities. So the fact that everyone here today took the time to be here means a lot to myself and the organization. And feedback is encouraged. You can find my email on the website. And if there's anything that you want to take the time to discuss further, I'm here for that. I learn a lot through the conversations that I'm having with a lot of the stakeholders and members in the region. And it's fun because we're all pretty passionate about the same subject. We just approach it differently, which I think is a great thing.
Hear, hear. That is very well said, and I think a great place for us to wrap up this segment in today's Giving Tuesday lineup. So we're going to have a 1 hour break. And then at the top of the 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central hour, we're going to hear from our Mid-Atlantic region next. So I look forward to being back with you all then. Sara, tremendous job. All of you here in the space with us, thanks, as Sara said, for taking the time to join us. Have a wonderful holiday season, and thanks for all that you do to support the work that we are doing in service to these forests and these species. Have a great day, everybody.
Goodbye.